Hello guys, welcome back to Archive Horizon. In this video, I like to talk about Enya Tempest DPS, her weapon comparison, and her logistic talent priority. The weapon I'm gonna compare is Amethyst Thorn, Tiny Grains, Full Alert, the Battle Pass weapon, and Swamp Snapper. Enya Tempest stat I use in this calculation is Manifestation 2 stat. The weapon stat for this comparison is Tier 2 Amethyst Thorn, Tier 1 Amethyst Thorn, Tier 2 Tiny Grains, Tier 1 Tiny Grains, Tier 5 Full Alert, and Tier 5 Swamp Snapper. While the Logistic talent has 14% attack percent talent and 11.8% kinetic damage talent. I will start by giving a quick explanation first about all of the weapons buff. For Amethyst Thorn and Swamp Snapper, you probably won't encounter any issue since they are Enya Tempest exclusive weapon. For signature weapon, all you need is just to use the standard skill and continuously deal damage until this buff reaches 10 stacks. Meanwhile, for the free-to-play weapon, all you need is just to use the standard skill continuously until this buff reaches 5 stacks. Dealing damage or not is not necessary. However, for Tiny Grains and Full Alert, it is a different story. In order to use Tiny Grains, your operative has to be a masochist to trigger this damage taken debuff. And make sure your operative get hit every 3 seconds to reverse this debuff duration. Therefore, it is quite unsuitable for Enya Tempest since Enya can float while using the standard skill, which prevent her from getting hit by low attack projectiles or shockwave from the enemy, reducing the chance of triggering this weapon debuff. Not to mention that this weapon debuff only applies to enemy within 5 meters, so if the enemy is floating or attacking from afar, then this debuff won't be applied to them. Meanwhile, even though Full Alert has a very simple weapon buff triggering mechanism that only requires you to stay in the battle situation for a certain duration, this weapon has a slow ramp-up time, which might take up to 6 or 10 seconds to fully stack up the weapon's buff. This makes it unsuitable for speedrun battle unless it is a long battle. So only the buff from Tiny Grains and Full Alert you need to keep in mind. I think that's all about the weapon skill. The next thing I want to say is Enya's shooting DPS is very low due to the lack of ballistic buff, so you can ignore that. Additionally, her dodge vortex and support skill damage are also very low, so just use them only when needed. For example, only use tactical dodge to approach the enemy position, and use support skill to deploy high ground so that your teammates can shoot from above. Lastly, this is just to show that the higher her ultimate energy she consumes when using her ultimate skill, the higher her DPS will be. Therefore, if you are using her in a long battle, only use her ultimate skill once her ultimate energy is maxed out. While for speedrun battle, just accumulate the necessary amount of ultimate energy to nuke the boss out of existence. As for the weapon comparison, Tier 5 Full Alert perform lower than Enya's free-to-play weapon, so you can forget that weapon exists. Regarding Tiny Grains, considering the complexity of the weapon skill mechanism, Tier 1 Tiny Grains is still very far from the Tier 1 signature weapon, while Tier 2 Tiny Grains, which can provide 21% improvement, might be acceptable, but remember that you need to be a masochist in order to use this weapon. Therefore, this 21% might be lower depending on the RNG of getting hit by the enemy or boss. So the choice is up to you. If you can be an ultimate masochist player, then yes, you can use Tiny Grains as an alternative option, but if you can't, then the signature weapon is a must-pull weapon considering that 33% is very high improvement compared to the free-to-play weapon. Her Tier 2 signature weapon can also provide almost twice amount of the improvement, making it very worth it in case you want to invest in Enya Tempest. As for Enya Tempest solo DPS, at the first glance, her solo sustained DPS to a single enemy already looks very good, even though she is a skill DPS that specializes in dealing AoE damage. That is because her Devo skill can provide 150% final damage increase if her skill only deals damage to a single enemy, and will reduce as the number of nearby enemies or destructible objects increases. However, things will change significantly when she pairs up with Tess Code because Tess can quickly ramp up her ultimate energy that can allow her to nuke the enemy with her ultimate skill, which can significantly increase her burst DPS for speedrun bosses. As you can see, in terms of nuking capabilities, Enya Tempest's burst DPS is almost in par with Chunxing Jet Arc in the same team composition. However, Chunxing might has the upper hand because she isn't tied up with Tess the Magician, which allow her to pair up with Acacia, Moxir, Penny, and Enya Exuvia to produce a higher team DPS output. Not to mention that, Chunxing can deal double damage to Seal, and her ultimate skill can ignore fortified parts. That makes Chunxing has more potential than Enya Tempest. In summary, in terms of burst DPS, Enya Tempest's burst DPS is also very high enough to skip boss invulnerable phase just like Chunxing Jet Arc. However, it will require a very high investment because Enya is highly dependent on Tess with Manifestation Tree. Additionally, because her ultimate skill damage is limited by her maximum ultimate energy capacity, Tess' signature weapon, which can increase ultimate energy capacity, is also needed to maximize Enya's ultimate skill damage. If Enya's ultimate skill cannot deal high enough damage to defeat a boss that has invulnerable phase within a single nuke, then more additional investment in Enya and her super operative will be needed. Regarding Enya's damage composition, in terms of high burst DPS that's suitable for speedrun, focusing on improving her ultimate skill damage is more recommended because her ultimate skill damage can contribute about 68% of the total DPS, while her standard skill only contribute about 32% of the total DPS. If you cannot defeat the boss within a single nuke and require a long battle, then focusing on improving her standard skill damage is more recommended due to in long battle, her standard skill can contribute about 80% of the total DPS, while her ultimate skill can only contribute about 20% of the total DPS. Therefore, in a long battle, Marian Riptide might be more useful to consistently buff Enya's standard skill and improving her sustained DPS. Meanwhile, in speedrun battle, Tess Code is required to quickly ramp up her ultimate energy to significantly improve Enya's ultimate skill damage. So the conclusion is, both of her signature weapon is very worth it to pull to significantly increase her DPS. Tiny Grains Tier 1 is not recommended, while Tiny Grains Tier 2 can be an alternative option, but make sure to become an ultimate masochist when using this weapon, and always pay attention to the symbol's existence before using Enya's ultimate skill. Therefore, if you don't like Tiny Grain's complex skill mechanism, then her signature weapon is a must-pull weapon, due to 33% is a very high improvement. Swarm Sniper Tier 5 is the last option because Full Alert has a slow ramp-up time and can provide less improvement than Swarm Sniper. Regarding Enya Tempest, is she a must-pull operative? Not really. Even though she is another top-tier nuker operative that also has a good sustained DPS, she requires a high investment in her burst DPS due to being heavily dependent on Tess Code. Unless you only want to depend on her sustained DPS, you can easily buff her sustained DPS with Marian Riptide and other super operative like Acacia and Ichel. Enya Tempest can also pair up with Enya Exuvia, but it is only effective to buff her ultimate skill for a very short duration, since Enya Tempest cannot deal ballistic damage to refill the natural order gauge and prolong Enya Exuvia's debuff. So if you already have Chunxing Jet Arc who can also skip boss invulnerable phase, or you dislike operative that art from the concept of third-person shooter, then Enya Tempest is skippable. For the Logistic talent priority, Attack percent and Alignment Index talent has the highest priority, while for the third talent is Kinetic Elemental Damage. Ultimate Energy Recovery is useless because it is what it is. I think that's all for me. I will upload a new video that explains about her skill, manifestation, team composition, and recommended boss. Please stay tuned. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Cheers.